Hey everyone, how's it going? Juan Das here. Happy New Year. Welcome back to another lesson and hopefully the first of many for this upcoming year. So I put out a poll, or not really a poll, just kind of a feeler question on Instagram Live and my Patreon, and this topic came back as the most suggested topic. I think I had maybe 6 or 7 different people say the exact same thing. And it was how to build a practice schedule. And I think it's kind of fitting. A lot of people like to try a New Year's resolution or achieve a new goal for the year and set some new habits. And one of them is probably, for many musicians, practicing more consistently, and being more productive in their practice sessions. And this is actually a topic that comes up quite regularly amongst students. Usually at some point or the other, I always end up talking about how to build a practice session, how to achieve goals, and how to consistently work towards it. I think all of us at some point or the other kind of feel that we don't have all the time in the world that we would like, or we don't even know what to work on or how to go about it or how to build something. And as I say, for some people, a practice session or a practice schedule in particular is extremely important. I mean, it's obviously important to go practice. Practice sessions are important, but building a schedule for some people helps. So before I get into it, I do want to make a couple of disclaimers. This is stuff that's helped a couple of students, and it helped some people along the way. Should it not help you, that remains to be seen, and that's entirely up to you. You can cherry pick the useful pieces of information from this video and apply them to your own life. The other thing I wanted to mention is that depending on your skill level, maybe building a practice schedule isn't the most ideal thing in the world. Usually the more advanced you get, sometimes a schedule can be great if you stick to schedules well, but I know some people don't stick to schedules well, and they prefer to have a general list of topics to work on. So with all that out of the way, let's actually get into the meat and potatoes of what makes up a practice schedule. And the first point I always have students kind of think about before they think about their goals, before they think about what they have to practice, is how much time do you have? Some people have full-time jobs, some people are in school, some people take multiple jobs. Some people have many things going on in their life. They want to, leave time for their hobbies, leave time for their family, leave time for their kids, whatever thing life throws at you, you want to have time for everything. So what I usually recommend students do is look at their day, and this is just basic time management. So if you're not a musician and you're watching this, maybe some of this might be helpful to you. Look at your day and figure out, where are all my free slots? And on average, give or take, how much time do I have per day? Now, some musicians think, I have to be practicing 8, 9, 10 hours a day. And granted, yes, many musicians have done that. It's been something documented through history. I've done some pretty intense practice sessions. I used to practice 5 or 6 hours a day when I was at Berklee. And, on the weekends, it would sometimes go up to 10, maybe 12 hours just spent with the instrument. But I don't think that's the healthiest thing in the world, and I would rather a student put in dedicated, focused time, even if it's only 2 hours a day, or maybe even less. I've seen students make great strides with 1 hour a day, but incredibly focused practice. So look at your day, establish how much free time do you have available, or maybe establish, can I go to bed a little later or earlier, or can I wake up a little later or earlier to accommodate that, whatever it means to squeeze in more hours, so that I can achieve my practice, but also, maintain a healthy schedule and do the things that you need to do to function as a normal human being. And then once you have that, let's say you have 2 hours to work with, right? I'm just picking an arbitrary number. It can be half an hour, it can be 1 hour. The number that you have available to you is what you have to work with. I'm not saying aim for an ideal. I'm not saying do the bare minimum. I'm saying work with what you have available. Now moving on, then I ask students, what are your goals? And you may want to take out a piece of paper and write along, what are your goals? What do you want to achieve? If your goal is simply, I just want to learn how to play guitar and enjoy it, and this is just a hobby for me, then chances are you don't need as much practice time as maybe someone who's training to be a dedicated professional and make a career out of it. And especially if you're dedicating yourself to jazz. However, if you're a hobbyist who takes their hobby seriously, then, plan accordingly, but don't be hard on yourself if you're not meeting criteria all the time. The idea of setting your goals will inform what you need to practice, but it'll also kind of fuel like, okay, how should I be tackling this? And it kind of gets your mindset in a good spot. So let's say if you're not a professional, then I know sometimes some people who are hobbyists or people who just do it for the love of it sometimes get a little down on themselves because they think they're not working as hard as they should. And for those people, I would say your priority is your enjoyment. Are you enjoying playing the instrument? Are you enjoying your time with it? Yes, you need to do some dull stuff on occasion if you want to progress and if you're a particularly serious hobbyist. But take into account what your goals may be, and this will allow you to plan, right? So let's say your goal is, well, that's a general goal. Like, I want to do this with my life with music. And then go from there. Try find really small tangible goals. Anytime I have a new student come in, I always ask them, what are your goals? And if the goals are quite large, I try get them to be very specific. I just tell them, pick 2 or 3 things that you want to accomplish in, let's say, this first month of lessons. And that gets them thinking about what they should be working on. So that's point number 2. Then point number 3 comes to actually building the schedule and what to work on. And this is kind of the part that usually trips up a lot of people, simply because there's so much to work on in music, and chances are if you've dedicated a lot of time to something or one particular topic, you'll have to dedicate more time to another and things like that. It starts to get a little confusing. So this is where I'm going to probably be a little more specific. But if you've done the prior 2 steps, this should be a lot easier. So first off, let's cover what I think any musician should be practicing at any given moment. And this actually goes back to my fundamentals video. So if you haven't checked that out, please do. The first of which is technique. And for those who are familiar with me, I'm not talking about technique as purely chops. I'm talking about technique as knowing your instrument. So let's say scales, chords, arpeggios. Those are 3 topics, right? Then we have ear training, reading, right? Reading I do feel is particularly important. And it's something that everyone should aim to practice. I do understand that maybe not everyone is comfortable taking steps into reading, but I do think it's something that should be practiced. Improvisation, repertoire, and I think that covers probably the large majority of what you would want to work on for your instrument. And let's add in 8, which is actual raw physical technique if you want to work on, a particular technique. Like one of my goals is, let's say, I want to improve my chops, or I want to be able to learn how to play fast. If that is a goal for you, then prioritize that. And what you're going to do is you're going to lay out your practice session accordingly. Now, let's say we have these 8 topics and let's say you only have an hour a day to work with. It's going to be physically impossible to cram all of those 8 topics and really get a lot out of it, because it's the equivalent of kind of, this is the creative part of building a practice schedule. It's going to be very hard to cram it all into an hour. Divide 60 by 8, and then you'll figure out how much time you need per topic. And maybe sometimes you might need to dedicate more. So what I tell students is figure out where your weakest points are. I would say the biggest ones to work on are scales, chords, arpeggios, ear training. Those are the biggest ones. The rest kind of fall into place afterwards. Now, the other thing I suggest is, actually before I get to this point, so let's just kind of wrap this up nicely, pick accordingly. You don't want to be, if your weak point is, what I would say is maybe, okay, have a significant portion of your time dedicated, like 20 minutes to just working on scales. And don't work on things that you've already worked on. You know, maybe warm up with certain things, see if you can, you know, simple stuff like, can I connect all my patterns? Can I do it with the major scale? Can I do my intervals with the major scale? Okay, that's pretty clean. That's a warm up. Okay, I'm going to do melodic minor next. And then you'll start finding pretty quickly what you need to work on. So, you know, take a good chunk of that. And maybe you don't have to work on it every day. Maybe you work on scales most days of the week if that's a particular problem spot. You take maybe 4 sessions of your 7 days a week, or 3 sessions if you want to do 6 days practice and 1 day off, however fits best for your schedule. You know, dedicate time to the stuff you need to work on the most. Same thing could be said with arpeggios, same thing could be said with chords. You know, pick blocks. And here's another thing, don't try just cram a bunch of stuff. You know, give yourself breaks, you know, do like 20 minutes. I think it's called the Pomodoro method, or there are so many methods out there that I just have a hard time keeping track of them all. But do a significant chunk of time, rest, let your brain and your mind recover, go to your next topic. 20 minutes, rest, 5 minutes, go back, and so on and so forth until you complete your practice. The other thing about scheduling is that you don't have to do it all in one go. If you've got 1 hour in the day, 1 hour in the afternoon, 1 hour in the evening, that's 3 hours of practice in a day. But some people might feel like they're not getting the hours in simply because, you know, they think they need to do it all in one go. That's fine. You know, maybe in that first hour you do scales and arpeggios. Then you go and you do your work for the rest of the day, you have lunch, and then maybe you have an hour break. Use that hour. And then practice repertoire or practice improvisation. And then you have that hour in the evening. And this is actually something I wanted to touch on. Your practice time shouldn't just be all, as much as like I applaud focused practice and hardcore work ethic, schedule in some time to play. There have been times I've spoken with students and friends, and sometimes they come to me with worries saying, hey, I'm practicing all the time, but none of this information seems to be sticking, or it just doesn't seem to come out in my playing. And one of my simplest questions to ask is, how often do you play? To which I usually receive a question, or a response that goes something like, I don't think I'm playing that much, or I don't know. And if your answer is one of those two things, then schedule some time to play. You know, if you have a blocked practice session, close out with half an hour of just free playing and free improv. So it gives you something to work towards. And you know that free playing, you can relax and completely de-stress and go, okay, I'm just going to play. And hopefully, maybe your imagination will say, I want to try and incorporate something I worked on in my practice. Right? So, in general, that's how I would go about building a practice session, right? So just to recap everything, so it's a little more succinct and cleanly laid out. First things first, how much time do you have in your day? Establish that. Do you have one block? Do you have multiple little tiny chunks? Whatever works. You're trying to build something that you can stick to reliably. And what I would recommend, 6 days practice, take 1 day to relax. You know, you do need some rest. You don't have to be a crazy person in practice all the time. If you would like to, then by all means, nothing wrong with that. Number 2, what are your goals? And try be as concrete as possible. Don't give a wishy-washy goal, like, I want to be better at jazz. If you start with that, then establish, what do I have to do to accomplish that goal? And if you're not sure, maybe go to a teacher. And then maybe they can guide you if you have a hard time kind of figuring out yourself. But a good rule of thumb, take 2, maybe 3 topics and establish, I want to get better at this, I want to get better at this, or I have to learn how to do this. For example, I would like to be able to play a chord melody or a solo guitar piece because I've never done it before. That's a tangible goal, so you can structure your practice accordingly. And that can feed off into, okay, you need to work on these multiple topics. So establish your goals. That'll inform your mindset, how much time you probably should be dedicating, and what you need to practice. Then, number 3, actually build the schedule. So figure out your topics. Remember, for guitar, this can apply to any instrument, treat it accordingly. Broad topics, scales, chords, arpeggios, let's say general instrumental technique, ear training, reading, improvisation, and repertoire, right? For me, those are 8 things that you have to be working on. Remember, you do not have to tackle everything in one session. To do so kind of doesn't let your brain focus. Take maybe 3 to 4 of those topics, or 2 to 3 if you want to dive in even deeper, and arrange your practice session accordingly. For example, if you have an hour, take 3 of those and do 20, 20, and 20, right? So 20 minutes one topic, 20 minutes another topic, 20 minutes another. And you can cycle these topics as you wish, right? So let's say scales are a weak point. Okay, schedule most of your practice sessions to include scales as an essential topic, but maybe the others are more interchangeable, right? Or aim to do some technique every day. Then I would say ear training, reading, and then some practical stuff like repertoire or improvisation. And remember, always schedule some free play time towards the end, because it gives you something nice to work towards. It's a nice little reward per se for completing your practice session, and also gives your brain an opportunity to apply some of the stuff you've been working on in a free environment that isn't dictated by an exercise. So I hope this helps you out, and I hope this sets you up to maybe have a more productive 2022. Happy New Year again to all of you, and all of you who follow on the channel. Thank you so much for the support. Please do like, subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff if you haven't already. I'm looking forward to releasing a lot of new music and hopefully working on more artistic stuff this year. Last year was a wonderful year for that. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. I'm jumping onto Patreon now, so I will see you very, very soon. Take care, guys.